our postmodern culture doesn't want to talk about very much the linkage between knowledge and power. And I think it's because it's at the heart of some of what's wrong presently with our system. Foucault fleshes this out quite nicely in some of his works. I'll get back to just one area that I think we can now provide additional information and maybe kick it up a notch. But generally speaking, I was a teacher myself in Japan for a couple of years. And although I don't feel like I did a great deal of damage maybe to the students there, there is a sense, even at a conventional level of instructing, that you're sort of imposing what's right and what's wrong. And that makes sense. You need some of that to make a society work, right? In the following way, we're going to generally accept that 1 + 1 = 2 because it's been shown to be useful time and again. And that's reasonable. That makes a lot of sense. It gets a little bit more tricky, especially in and with the higher domains of knowledge and instructing. If you get to a university, for example, and you're presenting maybe a fractal physical model of physics, when the going theory is maybe quantum theory or something, then the postdocs are maybe very well going to just toss you right out. And that's sort of understandable in some sense. You're presenting a view that's contrary to what they hold as right. And a lot of minds have been put thinking into one direction. So there's less possibility, perhaps, on the whole, if you take a broad swath of the average number of people that provide these sort of far out, quote unquote, theories, that, generally speaking, they're going to be more often than not off more than the going theory. But there's this coupling, notice, between knowledge and power here that, the postdocs say, okay, no, you're not right, and therefore you're not going to get your doctorate. And you don't. And so we feel that, I think, in our culture, where we have to hold up a certain standard of what is right, what is true, to be withheld, or to be held within the context of the society. And again, that makes sense from the conventional place. You have to live up to that standard, in a sense. But those that maybe have more inclusive theories often get tossed out, the baby with the bathwater, as it were. So one thing that Foucault didn't, even though he's giving a genealogy of history, where this is an interesting point itself, his view of history is not one of you going back and get facts, because he believed, and I think quite rightly, that the majority of what these history textbooks said are through the lens of the interpretation of the authors that are making them. So you're not really going back and getting something that's a fact per se, but you're looking at these broad interpretations through history. And so, like Hamlet, if you read Hamlet, you're not going to say that Hamlet did such and such, and that's a fact. You're going to say, my interpretation of what's happening in Hamlet is such and such. And there's better and worse interpretations, but you can't really call it a fact. And so he's treating history in that same way. It's a genealogy. You're not really getting facts. You're just getting interpretations, and there's better and worse ones. And so there's this coupling between interpretation and fact. And this is a great revelation in some major regards of postmodernism. And further, what Foucault brought out was this sort of broad trend of historical progression, but he's strangely at the same time sort of undermining the notion of a telos, where telos is the kind of grand project or increasing, you might even say complexity of culture, which I don't maybe agree with. This is where I sort of differ from Foucault, in the sense that I believe that culture, if it's moving in a healthy way, culture, self, and that includes one's physiological self, that is biological structure, and one's psychology, are moving to more complexity. And so what I mean by that is that actually your mental faculties and your physiological faculties on the whole being more interconnected through eating more healthy, more knowledge of what's going on is actually creating new neural pathways and such. Your psychology and your physiology are actually becoming more complexified, and that's shown in the world in more complex social arrangements and such. So one thing that our politics has done is realizing in the back rooms that we aren't just rational, which was sort of arguably the foundation of democracy, was this notion that we are purely rational beings and will make self-interested decisions on our reason, was that in fact, no, we're not. That we have these sorts of drives, impulses, and emotions and so forth that do play a major role in our decision-making factors. So what's happened, in my view, is that a lot of these individuals have taken, the power individuals have taken this knowledge and essentially treated us as impulse machines, desire machines, in a major way. And it actually succeeded in some measure of creating us that way by programming us with high level intelligently programmed propaganda that sort of make us more and more that way, actually. We're not totally by any means, but that's the push. So they've actually reduced our humanity through this process in a major way. Instead of, whereas, if you just compare this to the original democracy, they're treating us as rational agents, which is at least respecting us at a near one-to-one level. Maybe some are more rational, that is, the leaders, than the average Joe, but at least they treated us generally as sort of a rational agent. And now they're treating us as desire agents, essentially, going at the whims of desire. This comes out of Freudian psychology, by the way, and was taken up largely by Edward Bernays. And then so the move, in my mind, is to say, okay, indeed, not everybody's rational, not everybody's capable of reason, because there's a developmental trajectory that takes some time to develop reason. But you gotta at least treat the average Joe as quite reasonable, and even reflecting something trans reason, that is to say, altruistic impulses in some cases, although it's been sort of bred out of us through this system.